I found out my parents had been sending my brother money every month for 8 years while telling me they could not afford to help me. My name is Rebecca. I am 36 years old. I live in Houston, Texas. And 10 months ago I discovered that my parents had been sending my brother $2,000 every month for 8 years while simultaneously telling me they were on a fixed income and could not contribute to my student loan payments, my medical bills during a difficult health period, or the down payment I had been saving for on my own for 6 years. My brother's name is Ryan. He is 39, 3 years older than me, and had been living in another city for 8 years in an apartment that I had always thought was affordable given his salary. The $2,000 per month explained the apartment. Over 8 years that was $192,000. I found out because my father had a health scare last year that required hospitalization. And during the process of organizing his financial documents, I had been asked to help. I found a recurring transfer in his bank statements that went to an account I did not recognize. I asked my mother about the transfer. She was quiet for a moment, and then she told me. I want to tell you what I felt in that moment because I think feelings matter in these stories, and the feeling was not simple. It was not pure anger, though anger was present. It was something more specifically painful. The particular hurt of someone who has been told no repeatedly by people who were simultaneously saying yes to someone else, and who had constructed the no with an explanation that was not true. I had been told fixed income. I had been told we wish we could help. I had been told they were sorry they could not do more. For 8 years. While $2,000 moved from their account to my brother's every month. I asked my mother why. She told me Ryan had needed help, financial difficulties, a period of instability, things he had been embarrassed about, and had asked them not to share. I asked her why the help had not extended to me when I had needed it. She did not have an answer that satisfied either of us. My father came home from the hospital, and I had the same conversation with him. His answer was more honest. He said Ryan had asked for help and I had not, and that he had not thought about whether not asking meant I did not need help or meant I had learned not to ask. I sat with that for a long time. I had learned not to ask because asking had always been met with fixed income, and we wish we could help, and now I understood that those phrases had not been true and that the not asking I had learned had cost me in ways I was only now calculating. My relationship with my parents is in a careful place. I love them and I am hurt by them simultaneously, and I am in therapy working on what to do with both of those things at the same time. My relationship with Ryan is in a different place. Ryan did not know that I did not know, and Ryan did not know how much the not knowing had cost me, and Ryan has been, since I told him, attempting to address a situation he had not understood he was part of. He has offered to repay me. I have not decided what I want from him. I think deciding what I want is the first step, and I am working on it. Update 4 months later. My mother came to visit last month. She came alone. Not with my father, just herself. And she sat in my kitchen and she said she had been thinking about what I had told her, and that she wanted to understand what it had cost me. I told her specifically and completely about the years of no, and what I had done instead, and what it had taken, and what I had told myself about my parents' love during those years that I was now revising. She listened without defending, and at the end she said she was sorry in terms that were specific and real. I told her I appreciated that, and that I needed time. She said she understood, and that she would be there when I was ready. I believe her. I am taking the time, and I think the time is the right thing to take. My grandmother had a secret grandson nobody knew about. He showed up at her funeral and looked exactly like my father. My name is Thomas. I am 44 years old. I live in Chicago, Illinois, and 18 months ago a man I had never seen before walked into my grandmother's funeral and sat in the third row and looked so much like my father that my aunt grabbed my arm during the service and said, "Who is that?" My grandmother's name was Eleanor. She had passed away at 87 after a life that had been full and complicated in ways that her funeral revealed were more complicated than any of us had understood. The man's name was Michael. He was 41 years old, and he introduced himself after the service with the specific careful composure of someone who has been preparing for a difficult introduction for a long time. He told us he was Eleanor's grandson. He told us his father had been Eleanor's son, a son none of us had known existed, born before Eleanor had married our grandfather, given up for adoption in circumstances that Eleanor had apparently never spoken of to anyone in her family in 87 years of living. Michael's father had passed away 3 years earlier. Michael had spent the years since his father's death tracing his father's biological origins, and had arrived at Eleanor 2 years before she died. He had contacted her. Eleanor had met with him privately. Eleanor had chosen not to tell her family. Michael had respected that choice and had come to the funeral because Eleanor had told him in their last conversation that she was glad he had found her, and that she hoped someday he would know the rest of his family. He had understood that as permission. I stood in the parking lot of my grandmother's funeral home and I looked at a man who had my father's jawline and my uncle's eyes, and I understood that the woman I had known my entire life had carried a secret for 60 years, and had taken most of it with her, and had left this one specific thread for us to find. My father was 68 years old when Michael appeared. He had a brother he had not known about for 68 years. The two of them sat together at the reception after the funeral for 3 hours. I watched my father's face during those 3 hours. The specific recalibration of someone absorbing information that changes the shape of their own history. Michael had documentation. Not to prove anything, he said, but because he had wanted Eleanor to be able to see the life her decision had eventually produced. He had a family, children, a full life. The documentation included a photograph of his father that my aunt said made her sit down, because the resemblance to my grandfather was something she had not been prepared for. My father and Michael have met 4 times since the funeral. I have met Michael twice. He is careful and warm and genuinely interested in the family. He is found in a way that does not feel like he is claiming something, but rather like he is meeting people he has wondered about. I think about Eleanor sometimes, about 87 years of carrying something, and about the specific decision to meet Michael privately and tell him he could know the rest of us someday. And about what that decision cost her and what it gave him. I think she knew what she was doing. I think she usually did. Update, 3 months later. Michael came for dinner last month. A family dinner, the first one he had attended. My father sat at the head of the table and Michael sat to his left and I sat across from them. And I watched my father and his brother talk for 4 hours about a grandmother they had shared without knowing it, and about a grandfather Michael had never met, and about what it meant to find family at 40, 1 and 68 respectively. My father laughed 3 times at things Michael said in the specific way he laughs at things that are genuinely funny to him, and I thought that laughter at a dinner table was one of the better things that could come from a secret kept for 60 years, and that Eleanor had known it might and had left the thread anyway. My parents left our family home to my youngest sister in their will. She had been living there rent-free for 6 years while the rest of us paid mortgages. My name is Catherine. I am 47 years old. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and 2 years ago my parents passed away within 4 months of each other. And there were revealed that the family home, a property worth approximately $420,000 in the current market, had been left entirely to my youngest sister Sandra, who had been living in it rent-free for 6 years while my other 2 siblings and I had been paying mortgages on our own properties. Sandra is 42. I am 47. My siblings James and Patricia are 45 and 43. None of us had known about the will's specific provisions because our parents had not discussed it with us, and because we had assumed without examining the assumption that the family home would be handled in some equitable way. The assumption was incorrect. Sandra had been living in the house for 6 years following a divorce that had left her in a difficult financial position. My parents had invited her to stay until she got back on her feet. 6 years is a long time to be getting back on your feet, and I want to be fair and say that Sandra had contributed to the household during those years. She had helped care for our parents as their health declined, had managed the house, had been present in ways that my other siblings and I had not been because we had our own households and our own lives at distances that made daily presence impossible. I want to be fair about this because fairness matters even when fairness is complicated. The will was legal and clear and had been written by an attorney and updated 18 months before my mother passed. My parents had made a deliberate decision. The deliberateness did not make it easier. James wanted to contest. Patricia was uncertain. I spent 2 months looking at the legal options and consulting with Patricia, our attorney, and determining that the will was solid, and that contesting would cost money and relationships and would likely not succeed. I told James and Patricia what I had found. James was angry for longer than Patricia. I told them both that our parents had made a decision that reflected something they had understood about their children and their circumstances, and that while I wished the decision had been different or at least explained it was theirs to make and they had made it. Sandra and I have had 3 honest conversations about the inheritance. She has acknowledged the difficulty of the situation. She has not offered to share the property, and I have not asked her to because asking felt like contesting the will by other means, and I did not want to do that. What I have asked her is to understand what it cost her siblings to accept a decision that was not explained to us, and to carry that understanding carefully in how she moves through our family going forward. She said she would try. I am watching to see what trying looks like. Update: 4 months later. Sandra organized a family gathering at the house last month, the first one since our parents passed. She had cleaned it and prepared food and had put photographs of our parents in the living room, and had made it feel, for the afternoon, like the family home it had always been rather than the property it had become in the legal proceedings. James came. Patricia came. I came. We ate together and talked about our parents and about our childhoods, and at some point in the afternoon I looked around the room, and I thought about the will, and about $420,000, and about 6 years of rent-free living, and about Sandra putting photographs of our parents on the walls for a family gathering, and I thought that people are complicated, and that love is complicated, and that both of those things can be true simultaneously, and that an afternoon of complicated love in a family home is worth something even when the circumstances of the home are unresolved. My uncle revealed at a family reunion that he had been paying my cousin's tuition. My cousin had told everyone he had a full scholarship. My name is David. I am 38 years old. I live in Seattle, Washington. And 16 months ago I attended a family reunion at which my uncle made a toast that quietly dismantled a story my cousin had been telling for 6 years. My cousin's name is Brandon. He is 34 years old, and he had graduated from a prestigious university 6 years ago and had told everyone in the family, extensively and repeatedly, that he had attended on a full merit scholarship that he had earned based on his academic record. The scholarship story had been a significant part of Brandon's identity within our family. He had told it at every gathering. He had told it to people he met. He had allowed our grandmother to tell everyone she knew about her brilliant scholarship grandson. My uncle's name is Frank. He is 61 years old and Brandon's father. Frank made a toast at the reunion that began as a tribute to family and became, approximately 3 minutes in, a detailed account of how proud he was to have been able to pay for Brandon's education, and how hard he and Brandon's mother had worked to be able to give their son that opportunity. The table went quiet in a specific way. Brandon went white. Our grandmother looked confused. Several cousins looked at each other. Frank finished his toast without appearing to understand what he had done and sat down, and the reunion continued with a specific undercurrent that the rest of the afternoon never fully resolved. I pulled Brandon aside an hour later. He confirmed what Frank's toast had revealed. There had been no scholarship. Frank had paid the full tuition. Brandon had constructed the scholarship story early in his college years, because he had been embarrassed that his father was paying while other students had earned aid. And the story had grown in the telling until it had become a fixed fact in our family's understanding of him. Brandon was mortified. Not because Frank had said anything wrong. Frank had been genuinely proud and had not understood the damage the toast would do, but because 6 years of a story had ended in 3 minutes of a toast, and the ending had happened publicly and without warning. I have thought about Brandon's situation with more sympathy than I expected to. The original embarrassment that produced the story was understandable. The story's growth into something he could not correct was a thing I recognized as how small dishonesties work. They become harder to address the longer they exist until they feel impossible to correct, and the impossibility becomes its own maintenance. Brandon addressed it with our grandmother the following week. He told her the truth. She said she did not understand why he had needed to tell that story, and that she had always been proud of him, and would have been proud of him without the scholarship. Brandon called me after that conversation, and said our grandmother had made him feel worse about the years of the story than about the story's ending, which I thought was probably right, and also very grandmotherly. Update: 3 months later. Brandon came to a family dinner last month, and my Uncle Frank made another toast. This one was shorter and said simply that he was proud of his son and glad the family was together. Brandon looked at his father during the toast with an expression I recognized as someone receiving something they had not known they needed in the form it arrived in. After dinner, Brandon told me he had been thinking about the reunion, and about the scholarship story, and that he had understood something about why he had needed the story that he had not understood when he was constructing it. He said he had needed people to think the opportunity had been earned rather than given because he had not felt worthy of being given it. I told him that was probably the most honest thing he had ever said at a family gathering. He said it was possibly the second most honest. We agreed the first had been Frank's toast. My father had a secret daughter from a relationship before he met my mother. She found us on social media, and my mother did not know my name is Michelle. I am 39 years old. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and 14 months ago I received a social media message from a woman named Grace who said she believed my father was her biological father, and that she had been looking for his family for 2 years. Grace is 42 years old, 3 years older than me. The relationship that produced Grace had predated my parents' marriage by 4 years. My father had been 23, the relationship had ended, and Grace's mother had not told my father she was pregnant. My father had not known Grace existed. My mother had not known Grace existed. I was the first person in my family to receive Grace's message because I was the only family member whose social media was publicly visible enough to find. I sat with Grace's message for 4 days before I responded. I needed to think about what I was going to do with it, because responding meant beginning a process that would affect my father and my mother and my family in ways I could not fully predict. I responded on the 4th day and asked Grace what she was hoping for. She said she was not looking to disrupt anything. She said she had grown up knowing she had been adopted, and had always wanted to understand her origins, and that finding out about my father had been something she had needed for herself, and that she would accept whatever level of contact the family was comfortable with. I told my father first. He was 66 years old and sitting in his kitchen when I showed him Grace's message, and he read it twice and then put the phone down and was quiet for a long time. Then he said he had not known. I told him I believed him. He asked how I knew it was true. I told him I had done some preliminary research, and that the timeline was consistent, and that if he wanted to be certain a DNA test would confirm it. He wanted to be certain. The DNA test confirmed it. My father called my mother into the kitchen and told her. I was not present for that conversation. My mother called me the following evening, and she was quiet on the phone in a way that told me she was processing rather than deciding, and that the processing had not finished. She asked me if Grace seemed genuine. I told her she did. My mother said she needed time. She took 3 weeks. At the end of 3 weeks, my mother called Grace directly. I do not know what they said because both of them have kept that conversation private, and I have respected the privacy. What I know is that my mother arranged for Grace to come for dinner 2 months after the DNA results. Grace sat at our family dinner table for 3 hours. My father looked at her across the table with the specific expression of someone meeting a person who contains something of himself that he had not known he had given to the world. My mother was gracious in a way that I found extraordinary, given everything the evening contained. Grace was careful and warm and real. It was one of the stranger and more moving evenings of my life, and I was glad I had responded to the message on the 4th day rather than not responding at all. Update 4 months later. Grace came for a second dinner last month. This one was less careful than the first, less formal, more ordinary. The specific difference between a first dinner and a second one when the second one has the first one's foundation to build on. My father and Grace discovered they share a specific sense of humor that produced 2 moments of genuine shared laughter that my mother watched with an expression I read as someone finding something unexpectedly okay. After dinner, Grace showed us photographs of her adoptive family, good people who had raised her well and whom she clearly loved. My father looked at the photographs for a long time. On the drive home, my father said he was glad she had been raised well. I said I was too. He said he was glad she had found us. I said I was glad she had found us too, and that I was glad I had answered her message. He said he was glad I had answered it too. We drove the rest of the way in comfortable silence, and I thought about a social media message and 4 days of deciding, and about second dinners and shared laughter, and about the specific things that find their way to you